Sue, how did you find carnivore?
Okay, so I found Carnivore just over 3 years ago. I started, and I first heard about it probably 5 years ago. I think my daughter mentioned it to me. So she was doing a lot of fat fasting. It was obviously in a lot of groups on Facebook and that where they would obviously people were talking about the carnivore diet and that sort of thing. And when she mentioned it to me, I just thought it was pretty nuts because I sort of come from a background of being vegetarian for over 10 years and vegan for a couple of years in there. And then even once I started eating meat again, almost 20 years ago, I kept returning to a vegan diet because I grew up with a dad who was vegetarian. I was very on board with the whole plants are the healthiest option, and meat is not quite so healthy thing. And so that was me. But my health had started to really deteriorate. So I've had health issues kind of most of my life, mostly gut issues, gut and digestive issues, some endocrine stuff, thyroid and hormonal issues and things. But my digestive issues were probably the worst, and they started right when I was a kid. And so they'd kind of been on and off all of my life, and then things got really bad when we moved back to New Zealand 10 years ago. I set up my business in some rooms that I'd been in prior when we lived here the last time, and they had a really bad mold problem. And so I was in there for 4.5 years, and I ended up moving my business home because I realised that the mold was really affecting me when I kind of developed this cough that wouldn't go away. But even prior to that, I had a whole bunch of other things that had got worse. I gained a lot of weight very, very quickly for no real reason. And that had me a little bit confused. And then my I have had problems with anxiety and stuff over my life, but that all got worse. Diarrhea, IBS diarrhea got way, way worse. And so that was all going on. And then it got to the point where I was having nosebleeds every day, and I was having these horrible dizzy spells every day where it felt like I was going to pass out or die or something. I had heart things that were going on. I don't go to doctors, so I don't have any names for what was going on with me. But there was all these things, and I was really concerned. I was getting really worried. I thought if something doesn't change, I'm going to end up at a point of no return. Like something's bad's going to happen. I could just feel that going on in my body. So what happened was I had we had my husband and I had done another 3 months on a vegan diet. No, more than 3 months. It was probably close to 6 months. We watched Game Changers, and because I was already on board with it, so it wasn't a thing for me. But my husband, he was first time ever. He said, "Oh, maybe we should go vegan." So we did, and I was into that. And so we were vegan for a while, and then from there I went onto a keto diet. Started losing some weight on keto, but I didn't feel any better. Nothing really changed with regards to my health. So I'd been on keto for maybe a couple of months, and I was following Dr. Mindy Pels on YouTube, and she interviewed Paul Saladino. And listening to Paul, I thought what he's saying makes sense. I still thought it was kind of crazy, but I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to give it 30 days. And so I did. And 3 years later, I'm still here, still kind of muddling along, not the fairy tale kind of carnival journey that some people experience, but getting there, definitely getting there. So that's how I found carnivore.
Wow. And so just to clarify for people watching, because, like Paul Saladino tends to be kind of a divisive figure in the carnivore community. When you discovered Paul, that was before he was putting the fruit and honey and stuff into
Yes,
his,
I bought his
yeah,
book. I bought his book because he had the carnivore book. Yeah, yep.
right.
So that was before he started eating the fruit. Mm.
Right. And so all those issues that you had, were those things that got better, resolved after you started carnivore, for example, the IBS?
So some things got better very quickly. So when in that first 30 days, the things that kept me here was that one of the first things I noticed was I had some keratoses on the back of my hand, the little dry sunspots. There was one bigger one here, and that disappeared like really quickly within like 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, that's interesting. The dizzy spells went away and the nosebleeds went away very quickly, like within a matter of weeks. They did come back, like I did still have them sometimes, but they've gradually tapered off and become less and less. So I think the nosebleeds in part were to do with the mold illness, but I think it was to do with oxalate as well. I have had a very heavy oxalate burden. I think because of my gut issues for years, being vegan for years, like living on things like spinach smoothies with cacao and raspberries and all of the stuff that's really super high in oxalate, but also having a mold issue as well, because mold creates oxalate in your body. So I've gone through a pretty wild ride with the whole oxalate dumping. So the IBS, the diarrhea got better initially for about 2 or 3 weeks. It didn't last long, and then it actually got way worse. But because other things were getting better and I felt better, and I noticed that something else that I noticed fairly quickly, I'm not sure how quickly, but I noticed that I was putting on muscle without doing any exercise. I was getting stronger. So I used to be a real fitness junkie. We actually owned a gym for a while in Australia, and I had got to a point where I just couldn't exercise. I didn't have the energy to exercise because of the mold illness and everything. And so I was getting quite weak. I was very overweight. And if I got on the floor, I was having trouble getting up off the floor and things like that. And that was really concerning me because, I work with people with their bodies. I do massage and I do another modality called contact care. So I'm dealing with people with their bodies with pain and injury and that sort of thing. And I have a lot of elderly clients, and I see them where they're not strong enough to hold up their body weight getting on and off the table, and where they're so rigid they can hardly bend to, get on and off. And I don't even want to be like that, but that's where I felt like I was heading, and it was really bothering me. And so when I started eating the carnivore diet and I started to realise that I was actually gaining muscle underneath the body fat, I could start to see my deltoids and my shoulders and that again without even doing anything. That kind of amazed me. I was eating a lot of meat because I was really hungry when I started. I think because I'd been vegetarian and vegan and sort of very plant-based and not digesting my food for such a long time that my body was just like, give it to me and keep giving it to me. And so I actually gained weight to start with. But so my weight loss since I've been on carnivore has been very gradual. I've still got quite a bit to lose, but it's been coming off very, very slowly. So, yeah. Did I answer your
No.
question?
Yeah. So I guess, like, what is it that's kept you going for 3 years? Is it just that you feel so much better that and you're
Yeah.
helping your body, or?
Yeah. I feel I like there is still gradual improvement. Like, so the IBS diarrhea thing has taken a long time to resolve. I think because of the mold. It's SIRS, I guess, like the chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and so it's been a real process and a lot of learning because I think there was a lot actually going on with my digestive system. I kind of realised that with the mold there was SIBO, and so I've worked on that. Like, once I learn about things, I kind of implement stuff and try it. And so SIBO was a thing, and my gallbladder wasn't working properly either. So I had a really big phase for many months where I was eating OMAD because I couldn't eat early in the day because otherwise I'd be in the loo all day and I had to work and live my life. So I'd just eat at night time, and then so I'd eat my dinner at night time and I'd be running to the toilet within 10 or 15 minutes, and everything was just going through me. And I didn't know why that was happening, but I eventually realised it was because my gallbladder wasn't working. Or wasn't working properly, because what actually happens, I actually just made a video about this on my channel. What actually happens is when we eat, the stomach acid in our stomach creates chyme, so it starts breaking the food down, and that's really acidic. And when it goes into our small intestine, our gallbladder is supposed to release the bile to neutralise that. And if that doesn't happen, that chyme will burn holes in your small intestine. So your fruit flies. So your body just brings in water and flushes it out. And so that once I realised that was actually what was happening, I tried taking TUDKA, and I took TUDKA for over a year, which is a bile acid, and that really helped. I stopped taking it for a little while, just started taking it again, mainly because I bought some more, and it has other benefits for brain and eye health and that sort of thing. So I'm taking that again at the moment, but it really helps because it thins the bile down, helps to heal the gallbladder and the liver and get things working properly. So I can eat a lot of fat now without it really bothering me, which is great.
Oh, that's excellent. So,
Mm.
I guess TUDKA is kind of like ox bile.
It is, but it isn't. So it's a bile acid. So ox bile is the bile from the animal, obviously, which has the same effect as our bile, except we're taking it through our stomach where it's not supposed to go that way. So I think sometimes, like when I tried taking ox bile, it actually made my diarrhea worse. And it, some people find they have to take it, it's, either before a meal or after a meal or whatever. For me, I couldn't find any way that it actually worked for me. Whereas the TUDKA is a bile acid that is part of our bile that our body actually makes. So it was actually UDKA is the bile acid that our body makes it, but it's got taurine added to it when it's in the powder form. So it has a different effect. So it helps to heal, if you've got fatty liver and that sort of thing. It helps. It has a lot of different benefits in the body and just has a different effect. And I think for a lot of people whose gallbladders aren't working properly, so this is actually really common, I think, is people come onto a carnivore diet and they, especially if they've been eating very plant-based, they might have not been eating a whole lot of fat for a lot of years. I mean, that was me. I did eat fat, but didn't eat very much of it. And so that bile just becomes sludgy and you might have some stones in there and stuff. The TUDKA helps to thin the bile out. So that helps to kind of get it going as well. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really
Mm.
useful because a lot of people I speak to, it feels like it's the same situation,
Yep.
Your
Yeah.
gallbladder's basically up on stumps in the front garden for most of your
Yes.
life while you're eating veggies and plants, right? And then
Yep.
all of a sudden it's like, okay, take this saturated fat, see what you can do with that.
Yeah. He just hit it there. Yeah, because a lot of people come on with fatty liver disease and things, and their liver and their gallbladders just aren't working well, and TUDKA does help to reverse all of that. Mm.
Oh, nice. So at this stage, how like you are still eating one meal a day?
No, I've been eating 2 meals a day for a while. I decided to try having breakfast, mainly to see if it helped with the whole weight loss side of things, lowering cortisol and all the rest of it. I can't honestly say that I've noticed a whole lot of difference, apart from eating more food. So I'm actually have just decided that I'm going to have another go at the lion diet because I seem to now be able to manage without any plants. So throughout my 3 year journey, what I found was with the diarrhea, I could go for a short period without any plants. But then if I went too long, it made it all worse. So things that have been sort of fairly consistent in my diet, different times have been either berries, just some blueberries or something, or fermented vegetables, so like kimchi or sauerkraut. And it's only a forkful. And I wasn't sure why it made a difference. I don't know whether it was the fiber that was just binding things up a bit. Didn't get rid of it, but it just made it easier to live with. But I kind of came to the conclusion a little while back that maybe for some reason it was the vitamin C because I have a lot of issues. I've had a lot of issues with histamine as well, and the diarrhea sometimes is part of the histamine reaction. So I tried experimenting with a natural form of vitamin C to see if that helped, and it seemed to. But yeah, so I'm not. I think there's been multiple things going on, between oxalate dumping and histamine and everything, and it's actually been really confusing trying to work it all out. But I'm definitely getting there now. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, when you're going through something like this, especially like you're not talking to a doctor either, so you're just kind of
No.
like managing this on your own. When you start to feel like you're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, that's really nice, right?
It is absolutely. The last 2 months have been the best that I've had, and it's just things have just started to really change. It is still not perfect, but just so much better than it
Yeah.
was. Mm.
And so your husband went vegan with you a few years back.
Yep.
Did he go carnivore this time?
He's So he eats mostly carnivore diet, but he has sourdough bread that we make here at home. He makes it now. I was making it for him, but he makes it now. So he has sourdough bread. He's a bread fanatic, but he eats meat. He'll eat a little bit of fruit sometimes. Oh, he has honey as well, off and on. But yeah, his calories wise, it'd be mostly meat. But yeah, tends to have that at lunchtime. He'll have bread with some honey sometimes, or cheese or whatever for lunch. Yeah, so that's his thing.
And do you ever get any feedback from people like, "Hey, why are you only eating those things?"
Yeah, that's been interesting. To start with, so in the first year when I was on carnivore, when I actually look back on photos, I think I probably actually jumped in too fast for my body. Um, I looked really bad, really, really bad. There's some photos about 5 months, between sort of 4 or 5 months in and towards the end of the first year, where I'm just black around my eyes. I looked really unwell. And I know at that time a lot of people were saying to me, because I have some clients that I'm kind of quite friendly with that I told that I'd changed my diet and everything. And they'd be saying to me, "Are you still eating that meat diet?" And I could see the concern in their face. And I know that my skin was bad as well, because I've had problems with my skin. I still do it, but off and on. And so I kind of could see the concern. And now looking back at those photos, I know why, because it looked like I'd aged about 10 years in a few months. I looked really bad. And I think that probably because of everything that was going on with the diarrhea getting worse, my body detoxing, I think that my kidneys and everything were probably just under a fair bit of stress, and my body was actually really struggling a bit. But because the oxalate dumping in the beginning of my journey was mental. I've had all sorts of experiences with the oxalate dumping, and through my bowel was the biggest part, but other areas as well. So yeah, I think that there was that. My parents, I think, were especially my dad, was kind of concerned to start with, because he's been vegetarian for close probably 50 years, and he's pescatarian now, so he does eat fish, because he realised that he probably needed more protein. But you could kind of see the concern. He's got used to it now, but initially he would kind of look at my plate, which is just meat and nothing else on there, and he was kind of quite concerned. But I think as the time's gone by, they can see that I'm here, that things are getting better, and that I'm healing, and things are kind of gradually improving. So yeah, there's more and more people that know what carnivore is now compared to 3 years ago when I started. Everybody I mentioned it to was like, "Well, what do you mean? What's that?" Whereas now you mention it and people know what it is. They go, "Oh yeah, my cousin's doing that," or my partner's mate's doing that, or whatever. A lot of people know someone who's doing carnivore, so it's a lot more well known than it was.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of growing the same way that, say, the knowledge of Atkins or keto did, but it's just
Yep.
growing faster because everyone's more connected now.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, like a lot of things, there's a lot changing in the world right now. And I think it's just time for, it's something that heals people's bodies, whether they go on it forever or for a period of time. It's a way of healing and sorting people's bodies out. And so I just think it's time for that knowledge to be kind of made more widely available. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
So if someone said to you, "Okay, so tell me what to do. How do I do this carnivore thing?"
Mm.
Based on the experience you've had, what would you advise them?
My advice, it probably depend on where they're at and what they're trying to achieve. There's a lot of people who are jumping on just for the weight loss side of things, and I mean, if they want to do that, then yeah, dump all the carbs and eat animal foods. My general advice to people is eat whatever animal foods you really like to start with. Don't restrict things because of whatever. Just eat, and eat enough to satisfy yourself, because otherwise you're going to fall off the wagon and go looking for other things. But then for people like myself who were probably not in the greatest of health to start with, and maybe better off going in a little bit more slowly and just gradually, especially if they've been highly plant-based, if they can. I don't think I could have gone slowly. It's just not me. I have to be all or nothing. So, but if they can, I would probably advise those people to just start dropping out some of the higher oxalate, like learn about oxalate, drop out some of those things gradually, and gradually switch more and more over to animal products, whether that's over a few weeks or a few months. Just, because I know from my experience, I think I just really gave my body a hard time and probably had a rougher journey than I needed to. But it's worked out. I didn't die. So.
When you talk about the rough journey, it's really quite scary how many people are out there eating, all the spinach smoothies and
Yes.
drinking all the spinach smoothies and all this kind of thing and juicing everything and whatever, and thinking, okay, well, I'm getting really, really healthy, but like
Yeah.
down the track, the kidney stones and everything that are going to come from that, it's pretty scary.
Yeah. It is pretty scary. And it's, like I've looked into, because of my experience, I looked into whether oxalate can cause breast cancer, and it can. Like there's research out there that shows that oxalate can trigger breast cancer, can trigger other cancers as well, because it's acidic and because it's crystals. Because I had a pretty wild experience where I had a whole pile of oxalate crystals come through my skin, my boobs, and that got me looking. I was like, so if they're coming out of there, they've been sitting in there for God knows how long, can this cause cancer? And there's actually quite a bit of research that shows that they can, but nobody talks about that. And a lot of women who are being diagnosed with, breast cancer and that, they're off doing the spinach smoothies and the beetroot juice and stuff, and potentially just making it worse.
That's awful, because the likelihood is, because we're told veggies are healthy, the likelihood is that if they were eating a lot of vegetables before, it's like they get the diagnosis and it's like,
Yep.
now time to double down and just go
Yeah.
even harder on the smoothies and the
Yeah.
veggies.
And that would have been me. That would have been me a few years ago. If I was diagnosed with cancer, that's exactly where I would have been, because that was my belief, was that was healthy. I mean, when I was in my late 40s and I had an overactive thyroid, I did a juice feast. I lived on juices for 78 days and didn't eat any solid food, because I thought that was the right thing to do. So, yeah.
Wow. And
Mm.
sorry, speaking of that, how's your thyroid these days?
I've never had problems with the thyroid being overactive again, because what I did, so when I was diagnosed with that, I actually went to a doctor because I had all this stuff going on that I couldn't work out, and she found out that my thyroid was overactive, and she wanted to send me to a specialist, and I said no, because I knew what they would do. They put you on a drug, and if that doesn't work, then they want to either whip it out or irradiate it. And I said to her, I know what the options are, I don't want to do it. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to research and I'm going to find a way to get rid of it. So what I did was I went to the library. I got out every book that I could find with alternative information about thyroid disease, and I got online. And that was when I did the juice feast. So the juice feast helped to reduce the symptoms. The symptoms were horrible. I wouldn't wish that disease on my worst enemy. So it reduced the symptoms, but didn't get rid of it. So then I actually did the GAPS diet. So the GAPS diet, GAPS stands for gut and psychology syndrome, or gut and physiology syndrome. And it's Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who is the author of the GAPS books, who has put this diet together. I stumbled across her and ended up, I got the book out of the library and I did the GAPS diet, because when I came off that juice feast, my digestive system really wasn't digesting anything very much at all. It's like it almost stopped working. And so when I started on the GAPS diet, I took all plants out of my diet, only for a few days. But I went on to just meat, broth and meat, and then gradually eggs, and then yogurt, and then just gradually adding some veggies into the broth, well cooked. And I remember when I took all those plants out of my diet, everything just improved so much at that point. But it wasn't. I didn't click. I didn't register that it was the veggies being gone, because she talks about fiber. She talked about fiber in the book and how if your gut is irritated, like if your gut is inflamed, the fiber is like putting steel wool on inflamed skin. And that made sense to me. I thought, yeah, okay, so that makes sense. So it made a huge difference, but I didn't stay off the plants for very long. And I didn't actually stay on the GAPS diet for long enough to really sort my gut out. But it got rid of the thyroid, the overactive thyroid. I think my thyroid's been a bit underactive, but sluggish, probably most of my life, to be honest. But it's nothing that causes me huge dramas apart from maybe some weight and stuff, and seems to be probably a bit better now than it has been. I don't feel the cold and that like I used to, so I think that's actually improved.
Right. Nice. So Sue, how can people reach out to you? How can they find your channel?
They can find my channel if they search for my name, Sue Woolage, or Living Carnivore is my current channel name, because I do eat some fermented stuff, and most of the time, not all the time, but some of the time. Or my Substack, I'm just suewoolage.substack.com. And yeah.
Awesome. I'll link to both of those in the show notes.
Okie dokie.
Thank you for coming back on, Sue, and letting us know how things are going. I really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Dave.